Welcome to episode 3 of NFL Daily's 25 players in 25 years. Yes, we are talking about the best players of this century, and there is no one I would rather talk to than Brian Baldinger of NFL Network. Baldy, you've been covering the league this whole time. I'm going back and watching some of the highlights. You're on the Fox calls for some of these guys, and of course, you've been with us at the network, so a great perspective that I know you'll give, and I had to get you on a show where there will be an offensive lineman. No spoilers yet, but there will be an offensive lineman on this one.
All right, well done. You can't have a list without a few offensive linemen on it. I know that.
Let's just get right to it. We're not starting with the lineman, but we are starting with someone that I loved watching when I was starting my career out.
Number 15, LaDainian Tomlinson.
And the handoff to Tomlinson. Left side, and he will gallop into the end zone. Charger fans are witnesses to history.
The kid from Rosebud, Texas, you done good. I want to thank you for allowing us to witness your greatness. Wow, what a player, what a person.
Who do we want to be? Y'all want to be champs or y'all want to be chumps?
From the left hash on 2nd and 4. A little pitch back to LT. He's looking to throw towards the end zone. Gates got it! Touchdown!
That's why you're the greatest. That's why you're the greatest.
LaDainian Tomlinson, one of the best to ever do it. He could run, he could catch, and heck, you could get him on the move. He could throw a little bit right there to Antonio Gates. Just an incredible career. There was a 6-year stretch, Baldy, where he goes 3 first-team All-Pros and 3 second-team All-Pros mixed in there. And during that stretch, he played the running back position about as high a level as I've ever seen anyone play it.
Well, we've all got a chance to work with him, Greg, so we know what kind of person he is. So you got to factor that in too, because just, the person, the quality of person, the teammate, all that. But the God-given talent, there's so many flashback memories. I remember Greg doing the Senior Bowl his year coming out of TCU. And I remember we were going to practice, and I'm doing the game for TNT. I'm walking down to practice with all the guys, and the first person I see is number 5. It's LaDainian Tomlinson. I'll never forget it. Like, he just moved differently than everybody. So that was my first memory visually of watching LT. Then I remember, Marty Schottenheimer was his coach for a while with the Chargers. And I remember, back when veteran players, even star players, used to play in the preseason, Greg. I'll never forget, like, the first play of the game of a Chargers preseason game, they flipped it to LT. And, it was a touchback. You get the ball at the 20-yard line. He goes 80 yards off right side, like literally 80 yards. Nobody touches him. He lays the ball on the ground. Marty Schottenheimer waves him over to the sideline and says, "You're done. Not just done for the day, but you're done for preseason. We've seen enough. 80 yards, one play. We've seen enough. Let's get ready for the season." He's had a year we had 100 catches in a season. You mentioned, those first 7 or 8 years, Greg, he averaged 400 touches a year. Like, you give any back in this league over the last 25 years, 400 touches, they were done the next year. Jamal Anderson, Sean Alexander, Deuce McAllister. You go through the list of guys. 400 touches, it really, really breaks a running back. LT just thrived on that volume of work that he got, especially in those first 8 years.
Right. So the stats are crazy. In his first 9 seasons, he scored 19 more touchdowns than any player in NFL history. And so that's the meat of a guy's career. Right. And even if you look at the whole career, touchdowns per game, only Jim Brown goes better than him. And you're absolutely right about saying that he did it year after year after year. I have to point it out because I was in the industry at the time. He's got to be the fantasy football GOAT. I actually went and checked some stats, and he had of this era, if you're given points per reception, he has the most fantasy points per reception of any of these running backs by so much. It's ridiculous because you're absolutely right. Like, usually you have a season like that MVP season he had. And you mentioned what a great person he was. He won the Walter Payton Man of the Year and the MVP in the same season. And you expect some sort of fall off the next year. And then it's just like, nope, I'll just go for another 2,000 yards from scrimmage. He did that 3 different times. So it was the consistency and the complete game that he had.
There's no question about it. And, just the way that they used him. And then you got to talk about how he played in the postseason, whether with the Chargers or the Jets. He played very well in the postseason. Even after all that stuff isn't even mentioned when you just look at the regular season stats. But, I just think that he had this, I think all of the very great athletes have a different level of stamina than everybody else. Like, I've played with my share of Hall of Fame players, and they just didn't get fatigued. And, to see a guy like LT, we can talk about all the stats. We can all read them, Greg, and he's worthy of all of those. But then, he didn't miss games, and he came back the next week, and he didn't get tired out there, in September, out there in San Diego, whatever the temperature was. All of those kind of things mixed in as well. And then, look, he was the focal point of the offense. Okay, if you want to stop a running back, go stop him. Well, everybody had a hard time, even if that was the focal point, of stopping him, because the way that he was built was a big part of his success. I mean, the size of his body from the waist down, it's enormous. Like, he could handle the punishment, but then at the same time, he was built, almost like an offensive guard from the waist down on a 5'10" frame. But then he had incredible elusiveness and ability to stop and start and make people miss. Like, that was the other part. He could truck you, but he basically made you miss, and then he outran you.
I love that you brought that up and sort of how you first saw him move at TCU, because I do think of the contact balance. Like, he was very tough to get on the ground. And I found a quote while researching this from Marshall Faulk, who I would put right there, maybe even a little above LT. And the reason he's not on this list, we're cutting it off at 2000. Some of his best years were before 2000, and otherwise he would be on this list. LaDainian Tomlinson, by the way, is the highest running back on this list. But what Falk said that was so interesting to me was LaDainian can do everything that I do just as well, but the difference is if you want to give him the ball on the inside, on a goal line situation, just to run over someone, he's even a little better than me at doing that. And look, Marshall Faulk believes in his greatness because he was one of the greatest players of all time. So for him to say that about LaDainian Tomlinson, who was a big play waiting to happen when he got in the open field and was so not crafty, but so precise as a receiver, for him to say that, yeah, he had all that, but he had a little more even with the power game, that really speaks volumes to me.
Well, what's interesting, Greg, is I remember, his signature move at the goal line was to leap over everybody. And he learned that, and he watched Walter Payton, so Walter Payton is the one that went up and over. He would protect the ball. He would go backwards over. And I remember one day we were doing, something out in Culver City on his leap. And we had like these high pit, like these high jump pits out there for him to kind of emulate it, the whole thing. But his thing was, a lot of guys are afraid to do that, dive over a pile at the goal line because you get the ball knocked out. Well, he strapped the ball to his chest the way Walter Payton did. And, that year when he scored 31 touchdowns, I forget the number, Greg, of runs that were, or touchdowns were from 2 yards in, but he literally could take off every bit from the 3-yard line and go over the top to score.
Yeah, and obviously a very smart player. But everyone on this list, it's funny because you could basically say this about, you're not going to get this far unless you're an incredibly hard worker and incredibly intelligent. But he had that feel of, man, he would get on the defender so quickly. He would eat up that open space, and then when he would get in the space, he could make you move and make you miss in tight quarters. So Lorenzo Neal spoke about that, his longtime fullback, that they don't really play football, Baldy, like they did back with Marty Schottenheimer and those Chargers teams.
Low Neal never cared. He never cared if he ever carried a ball one time in a season. He was the eyes of LT. So many great backs in the history of this game. But, that run with him, I mean, they're still best friends, as you can imagine. But, I mean, that run of those two guys, I formation, lead back, all that kind of stuff that we all kind of, went through. I played in a number of those type of systems. We don't see much of that anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, the Chargers, that team and that AJ Smith had put together, and with Marty, and then even after Marty, one of the great teams that didn't get over the top, like LaDainian Tomlinson would do at the goal line, didn't quite break through because of some of those Patriots teams. I'm glad he had that time with the Jets. He really enjoyed it. Said that was one of the best moves he ever made in his career. Really enjoyed the back half of his career with the Jets. So salute to him. He was a tough man to take down. One of the few players, I guess, historically that I could imagine actually being able to tackle LaDainian Tomlinson in the open field is our next player.
Number 14, Luke Kuechly.
And it's intercepted, picked off 10, 5 right side, A.J. Klein takes it to the house for a touchdown.
That's Luke Kuechly right there. That's Luke Kuechly.
Very quiet. Goes onto the field, flips the switch, lunatic.
Hey, I'm all over him. Hey, we gotta go now, Chuck. Ain't nobody know you.
3rd and 3, and here they come. It's Kuechly who gets to Manning back at the 9.
Favorite blitz, sending these linebackers up inside, and Luke Kuechly just so fast.
Luke Kuechly, he reminds me of Peyton Manning, a guy that is totally prepared, that is going to know what's going to happen before it takes place because he has studied so much.
On 2nd down, Romo looking to throw, has time, zings it, and it's intercepted at the 38-yard line. Kuechly has it. He's going to go into the house. It's the second pick 6 of the game for the Carolina Panthers.
Woo, Luke Kuechly, he was a problem. And Baldy, I know you're joining this series midway through, but I wanted to let you know I wasn't thinking about guys who accumulated stats over a long stretch. I wanted to pick the guys who I thought were the absolute greatest at what they did when they did it at their very best. And to me, Luke Kuechly defines that. It's not going to take him off this list to me that he retired when he was 28 years old, because every single day he was on the field in the NFL, he was one of maybe the best linebacker off ball that I've ever seen at what he did.
Well, let me just put it in a nutshell for you, Greg. Like, if you didn't block Luke Kuechly, he made every tackle. It was just that simple. Like, he literally took the right angle, diagnosed the play. It was as if he stood in the offensive huddle, heard the play call, heard the quarterback explain the play to all 10 other players, and then he went and defended the play. That's literally how it looked. I remember, his last year in Carolina, I remember his final game he didn't play. It is the final game of the season. It was against the Saints. I'll never forget. And I was announcing the game, and I saw him, and I wasn't sure if he was playing, not playing. But, he had the injuries, and, certainly they curtailed his career. But all I wanted, I had a show called Film Sessions that NFL Films produced, and all I wanted was Luke to come into the film room with me and explain the game. Because when you sit down with him, I don't know that anybody can explain the game better than Luke Kuechly. And what he sees, what he studied, how he immersed himself in it, what he gleaned from it. I mean, there's an old saying at linebackers, two old sayings that are always true to a great linebacker. One, if you know the formation, you know the play. So he knew the formation, he basically knew the play, and then it's always slow till you know. All right, so that you can prevent the cutback and the reverses and some of the other things. But I mean, he was very difficult to fool, and he was very difficult to block. I mean, if you're a guard trying to cut him off on the backside, I mean, you didn't have any chance. So then he ruined your run game. And so then you had to figure out, well, how are we going to move him? How are we going to block him? Do we go straight at him? Because he was 245 pounds. He knew how to take on a block, a lead block from a fullback or a guard. So he knew how to take it on and shed it, and he was very good at that part of it as well.
Yeah, in a way, he almost like broke the game, because I love that, having that Tony Dungy clip in there. By the way, our producers, Eric Roberts, Chris Babona, just killing it. And Chris has the biggest smile on his face listening to you talk ball. So to keep it up, Baldy, it's awesome. But he was I mean, he wasn't like a lightweight guy, but, under 240 pounds. That's the only reason why he didn't go even higher in the draft. And some people I remember at the time were surprised they took Kuechly that high. They said, why would you take Luke Kuechly that high when you have John Beeson, who is a fantastic player at middle linebacker, and you had Thomas Davis, who had an awesome career, like an all-time Carolina Panther on the weak side, and they just knew this guy was too good. And Beeson made the mistake of he got injured during his rookie year. Kuechly's on the outside, and they put him on the inside, and he never moved. His entire career, Baldy, every single year, he was either a first-team All-Pro, a second-team All-Pro, or the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Because, that first season, he got Defensive Rookie of the Year, and then next season, he gets Defensive Player of the Year. That was 2013. I don't even think that was his best year. The best year, I thought, was when they went to the Super Bowl, and you heard the call at the very beginning of him making that pick six in the NFC Championship game, of him sacking Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl. I know they didn't win it, but it wasn't because of that defense. That defense, led by Luke Kuechly, to me was an all-time defense that just happened to go against another all-time defense in that Super Bowl against the Broncos.
Well, I mean, I think they were 15-1 that year. Cam was the MVP. I mean, they had a fantastic season. But I remember going to training camp. I think it was that year. And they trained at Wofford College, in South Carolina. So, it's a 100-degree day out there. But they've got Ron Rivera's got a pretty significant offense-defense scrimmage lined up for it. So I couldn't wait. I'm out there and watch it practice. I mean, to watch Kuechly go at it with Cam, you would have thought it was Sunday, like it was game day, the way that they went at it. Like there was something about the competitive fire of that practice that I've never forgotten. And Kuechly drove it on defense. He was, and you saw, guys talking about him flipping a switch, game day. And that's true because you get him, an hour after practice and he was back to being this just very reserved, very thoughtful, insightful individual. But on the field, the emotions ran hot. But, to him, game day was the test. That you study all week, you do all this film study, you take all these notes, and then Sunday was the test. Like, let's go do something about it. Let's go, let's go shut this run game down. But it's way more than that. I mean, his ability to read route combinations, to know what's going on behind him, in the passing game, and to get into those passing lanes, he might be as good. I mean, there's Ray Lewis, there's a bunch of guys, but I mean, he might be as good as anybody from that department of understanding the passing game from the inside linebacker spot as we've seen.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because, he led the league in tackles while he was in the league by far. He was the leader. He was second in tackles for loss while he was in the league. But his play and coverage, how he could adapt to how the NFL was changing, was so awesome. I actually have a clip. Let's play when he had 2 interceptions against Romo in back-to-back plays. The second one is just amazing.
2nd and 13. Romo, pocket seal, able to throw it, and he's intercepted by Kuechly. Kuechly inside the 20 to the 10 and to the end zone for another Panther defensive touchdown. Well, it's a defense that forced 5 turnovers against the Redskins. Picking right up where they left off Sunday. First down throw and into traffic, and it's Kuechly right back with another one. Can you believe it? Back-to-back plays.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, you could see Luke Kuechly, what do they call it? Running the pole, sticking with Jason Witten, a tight end, running up the seam and catching a pass over his shoulder. And if you're looking at the time, Baldy, it's the exact same time that ends one play, 2:36 left in the second quarter, and the exact same time that starts the next play. And Luke Kuechly's just ending the game for the Carolina Panthers.
Well, it was a Tampa 2 defense. The safeties are widening, and he's got, number 3 down the seam. It happens to be Witten. And, Romo had a great relationship with Witten. And most middle linebackers, I mean, you pick a great one, Brian Urlacher, a lot of guys are running that defense. But for him to get his head around and to see the play, most guys don't get their head around. They play the play blind. They run the ball. If it's being thrown, they're looking at the eyes of the receiver, and then they're defending it when the receiver goes to play. But he got his head around and then got his eyes on the ball before he took it away. That shows you the level of coordination and athletic ability that it took, because not many guys can make that play.
No. And like I mentioned, he got that Defensive Player of the Year early in his career, 13, actually, when there wasn't like an obvious pick, and I think everyone just looked around and was like, Luke Kuechly is the best like defensive player in the league right now, even though he wasn't getting like sacks or any like a ton of sacks, although he was a sneaky good blitzer when they asked him to do that as well.
Yeah. I remember, Greg, Carolina went out to play the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan had gotten to San Francisco. He was running his offense with all the pre-snap motions and shifts and all that. And they ran the ball down Carolina's throat. And so it was eye-opening. It was what it was. And because there was like 3 or 4 plays where they didn't block Kuechly and he didn't make the play. And they literally took him out of the play with the motions and the shifts. And so I broke it all down. And so it's like Monday, I break it down. I actually posted it, right? And how good San Francisco was in the motions and how they moved Kuechly. And so I get a call on Tuesday, and I don't recognize the number, but it's Ron Rivera. And he's like, Baldy, I don't usually watch your stuff, but my wife does. And I think her name is Judy, but I might be wrong. But anyways, he goes, my wife was watching it, and she showed it to me. And she said, you should take a look at this, Ron. So Ron watches it, and he's starting to pick my brain because Kuechly never gets moved like that. Like that, he's looking at it like Ron himself, a linebacker. He's looking at it through linebackers' eyes, and he's now picking my brain. What did you see that we didn't see? Like, how did they? What? Because he's like any coach. Like, how do we make sure this to prevent this from ever happening again? It was so rare that literally Ron it was forced to pick up the phone and call me to ask me what I saw in the game.
Oh, that's an amazing story, and it's true. Like seeing that would just absolutely stun you, and it's a credit to Kyle Shanahan because I loved what Tony Dungy said that he was like a quarterback. I think he combined the physical ability because let's not sleep on. He was just a physical beast. I mean, he had all the speed and the power when he was tackling that you would ever want. He had 24 tackles in a single game, and Panthers coaches swear it should have been 26 because that was the record at the time. They said we got him down for 26, but they had him for 24. It became such a thing, Baldy. I don't know if you remember like watching these games. Whenever anyone would make a tackle for the Panthers, the crowd would just go, Luke. But it wasn't even Luke. It was just, sometimes it was Thomas Davis. Sometimes it was just like pick your other white guy. It was just like they just assumed Luke Kuechly made a tackle every single time.
Yeah, well, it was easily done. Although, him and Thomas Davis, there was a pretty significant competition.
Yes,
about getting to that tackle and claiming that tackle. So there was a race to the ball.
One of the best duos of my lifetime. And yeah, all these players, of course, the very best of the best, as Baldy is. Let's take a quick break. We will be back with number 13. Back on NFL Daily's top 25 players of the last 25 years. This is a man who initially was in my top 10. I moved him up, I moved him down. No matter where you put him, you got to recognize he has the best nickname of anyone in the top 25.
Number 13, Calvin Johnson.
Looking deep, throw into the end zone, wants Calvin, well covered, he goes up, he makes the catch, are you kidding me? Oh, Megatron, you did it again, touchdown Detroit Lions. There were 3 Bengals draped on him, and Calvin went up and hauled it in, 50 yards and a score.
Around, 4 yards away is Johnson, snaps it close, there it is, Megatron into the record books. The single-season all-time NFL receiving yardage record.
I have never met a humbler, harder working, outstanding player than you are. For sure, bro.
Calvin Johnson, a.k.a. Megatron, a guy where if you just are adding up the all-pros, 3 first-team all-pros, 1 second, maybe not as much as some of the other guys atop this list. But when I thought about greatness, kind of like Kuechly, even though the career was shorter, what could you possibly do with this man? 6'5", 239 pounds, and ran a 4.35. To me, he's the definition of 1-1, so I could have put him any lower than this. What do you remember most about Calvin Johnson's career, Baldy?
Well, just the uniqueness of what you described. We've never seen a guy that size, weight, 40 time, leaping ability. We've never seen a guy with that many identifiable features. Okay, and then the passion for the game, the hands, everything that goes with it. So that's the first thing. He led the league, if I'm not mistaken here, Greg. He has led the league in. I mean, he had over 200 targets this season. When he had caught 122 passes, led the league in targets, receptions. He's led the league in yards, obviously, almost 2,000. Led the league in touchdowns. He led the league in every department at one point or another, in 1 year or another. But, I mean, he just compacted, he retired at age 30. And, he did all this before basically age 30. But I remember his rookie year, and I'll never forget, I was announcing a game for Fox, and there was at Lincoln Financial Field, and he went up for a ball. This is the only time I ever saw him injured. He went up for a ball. I don't know who the corner was, Sidney Brown. I'm not sure who it was. Sheldon Brown, maybe. But regardless, he goes up for the ball, and, I mean, he came down right on his back. And, I mean, he just laid there. And I think he only played like 10 games that year. But I don't know how many times while he was laying down, we showed the highlight. There wasn't a single person on the planet that could have gone up as high as he went up to go get that ball. And unfortunately, when you're that big and you could jump that high, sometimes those falls hurt. They kind of took a pounding on him. But, his ability, just like the play against Cincinnati and your B-roll right there, I mean, just to out-jump 3 defenders right there to get the ball. There's a lot of those catches throughout his career where literally you could just throw it up and let him go get it. And he could have taken that moniker, always never covered. I mean, that you could just call Megatron that.
Yeah, it's just like there was nothing you could do with it. And you mentioned that injury, and it did slow him down his rookie year. But for the most part in his career, he was durable. He missed a couple games here and there towards the back end, but by the end, he basically was playing every game, every season, and he went out on top. That does mean something to me. I'm not going to knock a guy that he didn't have his 30s when he was the second youngest Hall of Fame player ever, when he's racking up yards play after play. You mentioned that there were plays that he could just make that no one else could. And he's jumping over guys in triple coverage. Let's actually watch another play. This is going to be against the Green Bay Packers in 2015.
From the 17, looking for Megatron, and it's a touchdown. Right over Sam Shields.
How about the jump? Gets the left toe in.
Yeah, watch what he does to get that left foot down, holding on to the football.
Yeah, he got that other hand back on it. That would have been...
Look at him control it by the nose.
That's incredible, because he made other NFL players just look like regular mortals, like he was an adult playing with a bunch of kids.
He's Megatron. He's from another planet, right? I mean, that he literally was. And so, great nickname. It's a great talent. Like the other Hall of Famer, walk-in Hall of Famer, and Barry Sanders. I mean, their careers were short, but in those compressed period of time, 10 for Barry, 9 for Calvin, they were the best player at their positions. And it was hard to argue that. And so over that period of time, that was the most lethal receiver in the game. And look, I mean, Randy Moss was that guy, but, Randy wasn't 6'5", 230, 240. He was certainly a freak athlete in his own right, but I thought, Calvin Johnson's ability to take a 5-yard shallow cross and turn it into a touchdown or a long run afterwards, and that stride of his was just, there's something graceful. It's like watching Secretariat run. There's just something graceful about the athlete that he was and how smooth and easy he made everything look.
Yeah, that's a great comp for him, because I don't know what else it would be, but at that size, yeah, it was just kind of a beautiful thing to watch. And those 3 straight first-team All-Pros, and he had a second one in there too, was actually towards the back end of his career. And you mentioned the record-breaking season, but I'll spell it out. It was 1,964 yards, still the all-time record for receiving yards in a single season. He had 122 catches that season, and he just made things that felt a little impossible feel possible. So, Baldy, it wasn't even in that season that he had his 329-yard game against the Cowboys. That game had 14 catches, and that to me was symbolic of what that era was like for the Lions. They won that game 31-30. So all these catches that he's making, they needed every single one of those 329 yards because the defense usually wasn't there for them, and he had Matthew Stafford helping him out along the way, so it's not like he was in a bad spot. The organization let him down a little bit, but he did everything that he could absolutely do to lift them up.
No question about it. No question. I mean, there was not. I mean, I remember Matt Millen was there as the general manager, and they went through some quirky head coaches and all that. I mean, he survived all of that. And he was like, look, if you wanted to defend Detroit, you had to defend Calvin Johnson, and so that's what the game plan was for defenses. How do we not take Calvin Johnson out? How do we like at least limit him? And try to contain him because we know he's going to get catches and we know he's going to make some big catches and he's going to force all kinds of pass interference calls and all that stuff, but how do we take care of everybody else? Because we know he's probably going to get most of his.
Right. There's this famous screenshot of, I forget who it was, whether it was the Packers, just putting 3 guys on him in the red zone. They just were like, you can do whatever you want. You can, but like even before the snap, putting 3 guys on him before the snap, that you're not gonna score on us. How did you think he was like as a route runner and as a technician? Like, was there a part of his game that you thought was underrated in terms of that? Or was it more just he physically just kind of overwhelmed everyone?
I think he physically just overwhelmed people. I mean, there's better route runners than Calvin Johnson, but that's okay. When you have that kind of size and you can still come out of your breaks the way he came out of his breaks, when you can still move like that, it doesn't really matter if you can turn guys around because ultimately there was always separation because of his size and his leaping ability. And, some guys have to be great route runners because, they don't have the gifted size that Calvin had or that Randy Moss had. And so, he just by lining up wherever they put him, because they moved him everywhere, but just by lining up, he had people in their back pedal, before the ball was snapped, because the last thing you wanted was to get beat deep by Calvin Johnson. You'd give him a lot of stuff underneath, maybe try to tackle the catch, but you didn't want to be on the highlight reel on Sunday night or Monday morning with Calvin Johnson, going over the top of you.
Yeah. And so, some of it to me is just it's not just the numbers, but just the physical feats that few people could do. He has the most career games of 200 plus receiving yards. The only one that ties him is Lance Allworth. So like it's almost like a different generation of players. Calvin Johnson just felt like he came from another planet. And maybe not as many all pros as like Antonio Brown, who's not on this list, or T.O., who we've already done on this list, but when he was at his absolute best, he also has a consecutive 100-yard, game streak that no one else has. To me, he's one of one. He's Calvin Johnson, and yes, he is number 13 on the list. Our last guy we will talk about with you today, Baldy, is coming up next.
Number 12, Joe Thomas.
With the 3rd pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select left tackle Joe Thomas, Wisconsin.
$10,363. That's how many consecutive snaps I had during my career. That number 10,363 is special to me in a lot of ways. And not just because it's an NFL record, but because it shows that I was there for my brothers 10,363 times in a row. Being an offensive lineman is all about being a servant and showing up for everybody else. Loyalty, consistency, doing something bigger than yourself, showing up for the man next to you. Those were the values that I learned at an early age. And those are the values that I took onto the football field.
Joe Thomas with one of the most handsome busts there in the Hall of Fame. They did a great job with that one. The hair's on point, and a player who won an All-Pro 8 times, 6 times first team, another 2 times second team, was the All-2010s All-Decade team for the Hall of Fame and for Pro Football Reference. And that snap streak, Baldy, I think helps define him. Not just that he stayed on the field, but that the repetitiveness, and you can explain this as an offensive lineman, to be excellent and so similar snap after snap, and the discipline that takes. What impresses you the most about Joe Thomas?
Well, before I get to the question, one of my great regrets in life is I was offered an opportunity. The shot you have of Joe there on the boat, that's where he went draft day.
Yeah.
He went fishing with his dad. And they offered me a chance to be with Joe on the boat fishing draft day with Joe. And they didn't know he was going to be a top 10 pick. We didn't know which number or whatever. He was the third pick. But, like, I could have been there with Joe.
You got to be there, Baldy. Where were you? What were you doing?
You know, I mean, fishing just isn't one of my high priorities, Greg. Like, I don't know. Like, it can be really boring if the fish aren't jumping in the boat.
You just like swimming with sharks, Baldy? You got you need more action?
Sharks. So anyways, I passed up that opportunity. I regretted it. All the things that Joe said speaks to a brotherhood that really offensive linemen understand, the good ones and the great offensive lines as a group. They all understand how important that number was, because on a lot of those teams, they were a bad team and they were amongst the worst teams for much of Joe's career. And it would have been very easy to say, okay, you know, this elbow is popping out of his joint right now. I could take the Sunday off, or I could go back to for my brotherhood. Like, he'll never tell you how many injuries he played through or played with in order to keep that streak alive. That's number one. But the consistency is what everybody strives. That's what repetition is all about. So that when you want to have that muscle memory, so that regardless of who you're playing against, your technique is going to be the same. Play in and play out, no matter what happens on the play. Like, you just flush it, you go to the next play, you do a consistently great job, and you string together 70 great plays during the course of a game. And that's the goal of every offensive lineman. You can have 69 great plays, but the one play where you give up the quarterback sack or the quarterback hit or a hold on a big play, that's all you think about the whole night into the next day, is that one bad play. And I think Joe took that, just sitting down in the film room with him and watching him talk through techniques. You think you know the game. You think you understand the game, like a lot of us do. And we work at it. We all work at it. But when Joe explains the game to you, it goes to another level now. And things that you might just take for granted, the set, the hands, the hand placement, in the run block, the aiming point, all these things that kind of just sort of looked like they run together. They never just ran together to Joe. There was ultimately a purpose and a reason behind everything he did on the field, even though so much of the game is kind of random and kind of just, okay, let's just play the play. Like, you can't control it. But so much of it was what happened during practice to prepare for those moments.
Yeah, there's something too about a guy who comes into the league. They actually have some success right off the bat with Derek Anderson, that team that went 10-6. And then after that, it's just brutal. It's an incompetently run franchise who happened to make an absolutely great pick at number 3. That was a great draft, and they made the right choice there with Joe Thomas, but just made mistake after mistake, and it got worse and worse. And to show up, Baldy, and you've been in a lot of different NFL locker rooms, some great ones. I'm sure you were in some bad ones. I don't know, but like, speak to, I guess, what it meant for a guy like Joe Thomas to be there for everyone that came through that organization over the 10 years that he's there, and have it as an example of how to do something the right way, no matter how much they're blowing it from above in terms of how they're running the team.
Yeah. Look, Greg, I played on a 1-15 Indianapolis Colts season. Miserable, but I try to do what Joe did. What happens with a guy like Joe is it's very easy when you're, 1-10 and you're just playing out the streak. It's very easy to cut every single thing short all week long. Practice, treatment, lifting, extra studying. It's very easy to cut all that stuff short. Or when the wheels fall off during the game, to just start looking at the clock. And I think Joe just never did any of that. I think Joe prepared exactly the same as if they, instead of being 3-13, they were 13-3 and they're going to the playoffs. I don't think the preparation ever changed. And so if you're a teammate of Joe, a young Joe Platonio, some of these guys that came through Cleveland, with Joe, like at least you got to see what a real pro looks like and what it's supposed to look like. And maybe that guy that might shut it down or not go at it quite as hard, and watching Joe, maybe that makes you want to emulate him even that much more.
I love that you mentioned that, because Thomas's legacy to me was a part of my thought. He's the highest offensive lineman on this list, and you could pick a lot of players. There's so many great players, but Bitonio, I'm forgetting about who else was there that was really great. I'll think of it in a second, but it also struck me. Myles Garrett's talked about it. He's on this list. He's at the back end, and he's a guy whose first season was 0-16. And he saw what Joe Thomas was doing in that season, and as an example. So that's in terms of the way he played in Cleveland. But do you think he's had an impact, Joe Thomas, that is as a technician to the players and the position that came after him?
Oh, no question. No question. When I did a film study with him, we went back, he was a shot putter in high school. And, his kick start was basically what a shot putter does. And he just basically took the physics of throwing a shot put. Both hands were braced on the inside knee, his right knee. His left foot was back, and it was just like we did it in NFL films, where we basically shot him shooting a shot put and then dropping back to, I saw, one of the clips that he had was against, Terrell Suggs, who's one of the great pass rushers and one of the great matchups during his tenure as a left tackle, going against Suggs, twice a year. So there was a carryover from shot putting to what he developed as a left tackle. But I mean, Lane Johnson has copied him, that same start that Lane has, and his strive to be as consistent with that start. He did that. Jason Peters learned that from there. Jordan Mailata now in Philadelphia. They've all basically watched Joe Thomas and they copied it. And that's just a couple guys. I'm just around those guys more frequently in Philadelphia, so I know how hard they studied him. But I would tell anybody that if you wanted, because you get ready for the draft, Greg, you start watching these kids and studying them, like I did Joe Thomas coming out of Wisconsin. But what you're looking for at any level is consistency. And so what I'll say if a young tackle asks me what I think, I go, man, your set has to be more consistent. Like you're changing up all the time. You're late. You're not hitting the right mark. Like you could literally put a blindfold on Joe Thomas, and he would be able to hit that mark. His hands, his punch, where his hands landed, what the aiming point was. Like he rarely ever missed, and that was a big part in the pass game. In the run game, it's interesting. Like he had this thing, Greg, where if he was on the ground, nobody was allowed to pick him up off the ground. Like he couldn't get up off the ground. He had to off his back. So he had to roll over onto his stomach and then push himself up off the ground. But you'll go and see it. Like he talked about it and joking, like he would never let anybody pick him up off the ground. Like guys are just helping a guy up like that, come up off goal line. You're diving at somebody's legs and you're cutting them, whatever. Like that was one of his little pet peeves. Like nobody's picking me up off the ground. I'm getting myself up off the ground.
That's amazing. And yeah, to me, he's the ultimate example of a guy who he's talked about it for offensive linemen. He had to eat so much, and he focused so much on his career that his study habits of all the pass rushers and studying everything was amazing. But he talked about how much he had to eat and that it was unnatural for him. And he's the guy who the second his career ended, suddenly 3 months later, he lost like 50 pounds and he looks like a totally different, amazing, crazy human being.
Well, that happens to a lot of guys. You can go one or two ways. You either lose the weight or you gain it. But the most of the guys that lose it like he did, they lose it quickly because all the things that, trying to cram 10, 12,000 calories into your body, like you got so tired of doing it and making sure that otherwise the weight, especially in training camp, where you're in 2 days back in those days, the weight would fall off if you didn't cram 10,000 calories. So the first thing you do is, man, thank God I don't have to overeat anymore. And so just the fact that you're not just shoveling 12,000 calories into your body on a daily basis, your weight just naturally starts to go back to where it should be normally. So it happens to a lot of guys. And I didn't think Joe was going to be any different than those guys.
So only 6 players in the history of the NFL made the Pro Bowl, by the way, each of their first 10 seasons. It's a wild list. It's Aaron Donald, Joe Thomas, Barry Sanders, Lawrence Taylor, and then we're going way back to Mel Renfro and Merlin Olsen back in the 60s. So that's a hell of a list to be on. And so is this one. I felt a little out of my depth with the offensive linemen, so I hope I did you guys proud. I got Walter Jones at the back end of the list. I have Zach Martin because I thought we needed to get an interior guy, and he's, in terms of him compared to other guards, felt so ahead of the game. So he's in there around 17. So many other great players could have made the list, whether it's Tyron Smith. They thought about Trent Williams. Your guy Lane Johnson, they all would have been worthy too. So I hope I did your position proud, Baldy, and that you're okay with my selections.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm more than fine with it. I mean, there is, one particular left tackle in Baltimore, Greg, that you might want to consider. I know he's drafted. I know he's drafted in '96, so I don't know if that qualifies. The fact that he spent the early part of his years before the 25-year cutoff right there.
Jonathan Ogden had such an amazing career even after 2000 that he did get strong consideration. And if you were counting him from 96 on, he would probably be first. I would give him to you. But he is someone who came into the league. He was so good right off the bat. Like, maybe the best part of his career was his first 5-6 years, although he was something. It helped me take the easy way out, Baldy, sometimes when they had such great years before 2000, because it was painful. Yeah. It was like picking between children here to knock these guys off. So that helped me take Ogden off, because I was like, let's give it to the guys who were almost entirely in this century.
The one thing, Greg, about Joe and what you mentioned about the consecutive streak of, Pro Bowls for him, and that rare, that list that you mentioned of 5 other guys, I'm not saying that the voting is always, popularity contest, but it's kind of easy. Just, who's the best left tackle on the best team?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you kind of go in that direction sometimes. And, you're 0-16. Are you really going to put the left tackle on an 0-16 team in the Pro Bowl? A lot of players wouldn't vote like that, but that's the respect that he garnered. Even we know that the team and the organization was poor for long stretches of his career, yet the attention that he still received, consistency they played at, is still a sign of great respect from his peers and from the fans that vote, and the coaches and personnel people that all involved with voting.
Yep, and I tried to put a little more weight on the All Pros, and he dominated with that. And actually, PFF, which it's not perfect, but it's interesting because they're certainly not caring about what the record is or anything like that. And 2 of their best 4 seasons of all time, just by their total score from a tackle, 2 of their best 4 seasons ever, any player, any season, were by Joe Thomas. Just shutting people down in a great division, by the way, for pass rushers. So I feel good about him. We're about halfway through this list. It's going to be tough to top you, Baldy. Like, I would just like to spin the dial and just press a button and hear Baldy stories on all 25 of these guys.
Well, you sort of accumulate this stuff over the years, but a lot of these things that just get triggered by the conversation, Greg. So I'm happy that you invited me in. Got a chance to talk about 4 of these great players. Many of the players I've studied, week in, week out on film. So they're still pretty fresh in the memory bank.
Appreciate Brian Baldinger, and he'll be all over the airwaves for NFL Network and his podcast in the upcoming season. Our next episode will be our 4th edition of NFL Daily's Top 25 Players in the Last 25 Years. We're going to be joined by Yahoo Sports NFL analyst Nate Tice. There might be a certain player that he was a ball boy for coming up on that episode. We'll see you then.